In the corridors of power from Washington to Tokyo, a once unthinkable question is now being whispered. Could Japan, America's most loyal Asian ally, be on the verge of a historic pivot? The world is watching as aggressive U.S. trade policies threaten to unravel decades of alliance. The cost of friendship with America is rising, and the global order is shifting. For generations, the U.S.-Japan alliance has anchored Indo-Pacific stability, forged in the aftermath of war and built on shared values. But now, that foundation is shaking. The America First doctrine has evolved into a strategy that treats allies as economic rivals. Meanwhile, the BRICS bloc, led by China and Russia, has expanded, representing over half the world's population and a massive share of global GDP. BRICS offers a new path, multilateralism, and a move away from US dollar dominance. Japan faces a stark choice: remain a squeezed US partner, or explore a future with a rising, multipolar bloc. The decision Tokyo makes could trigger a geopolitical earthquake, redrawing the map of global power. The White House's new strategy is blunt economic war, not just on adversaries, but on America's closest friends. The goal? Reverse deindustrialization by forcing allies like Japan and South Korea to relocate industries to the US. Tariffs are the weapon of choice. Devastating, sudden, and turning partners into economic dependence. This summer, President Trump announced a sweeping 25% tariff on Japanese, Korean, and Chinese goods, demanding new deals that favor America. Japan, cornered, agreed to pay $550 billion in protection money for US projects, with 90% of future profits flowing to America. The US also secured control over Japanese investments, including a golden share in Nippon Steel's acquisition of US steel. South Korea faced similar pressure even after investing billions in US plants. Tariffs and immigration raids followed. Concessions only bring more demands. Allies are being pushed to their breaking point. The message from Washington is clear. Loyalty is measured in dollars, not history. This high-stakes gamble is straining alliances to the limit. The world is watching, and so are America's rivals. The cost of alliance has never been higher. As Washington strong-arms its allies, BRICS has quietly become a formidable global bloc. No longer just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS Plus now includes major oil producers and regional powers, representing 56% of the world's population and rivaling the G7 in economic might. Their goal: build an alternative to the US-led order, with new financial systems independent of the IMF and World Bank. BRICS is developing its own payment networks and credit agencies, offering countries a way to bypass US sanctions. Ironically, US tariffs have only pushed these nations closer together. In September, BRICS leaders coordinated a response, condemning US unilateralism and reaffirming their commitment to multilateralism. America's economic warfare is forging a more united opposition. Inside the Trump administration, a quiet fear is growing. The US dollar's dominance is under threat. The dollar has long been America's greatest source of power, enabling deficits, cheap borrowing, and devastating sanctions. BRICS has targeted this vulnerability, pushing for a multi-currency system where members trade in local currencies. Russia and China already conduct most trade in rubles and yuan, and more countries are following suit to escape US pressure. President Trump has threatened harsh penalties for any nation moving away from the dollar, but these threats only reinforce the desire for alternatives. The BRICS New Development Bank is lending in local currencies, and a new payment system to rival SWIFT is in the works. Every transaction outside the dollar chips away at US hegemony. Washington fears these small cracks could bring down the entire structure. The world is watching, and some are already making the leap. The era of dollar supremacy is no longer guaranteed. For Japan, the current climate feels like being trapped between a rock and a hard place. The US, once protector, now acts as economic adversary, demanding Japan reorient its economy to serve American interests. The $550 billion protection deal and US control over key industries have left Tokyo bitter. Meanwhile, BRICS offers an escape access to vast markets, diversified trade, and a chance to reclaim sovereignty. Aligning with BRICS would be a bold statement. Japan as an independent actor, not just a junior partner. Yet, the risks are real. The US alliance has long been Japan's security blanket, especially with China and North Korea nearby. Business leaders fear disruption, but US pressure is forcing a radical reassessment. The argument that America is no longer a reliable partner is gaining ground. Nationalist backlash is rising as Washington turns allies into dependencies. The question is no longer about loyalty, but survival. Can Japan thrive under current US terms? For the first time in generations, the answer is uncertain. The stakes for Japan and the world are enormous. Japan's political landscape has just shifted dramatically. Sanai Takaichi, a staunch nationalist, has won the LDP leadership and is set to become prime minister. Takaichi is known for her hawkish views and desire for a more independent Japan. Her rise comes as the LDP faces an existential crisis, with public frustration over economic stagnation and perceived US subservience. Takaichi's nationalism resonates with a population yearning for strength. She may see a pivot from the US as a way to consolidate power and revitalize her party. If Trump's pressure continues, he may face a far more defiant partner in Tokyo. Takaichi's decisions could either mend the alliance or steer Japan into uncharted waters. If Japan moves toward BRICS, the shockwaves will be global. South Korea, facing similar US pressure and humiliation, would watch closely, potentially following Tokyo's lead. The US could lose its two key Asian allies in rapid succession. In Europe, leaders dismayed by US tariffs and forced deindustrialization would see Japan's pivot as a call for strategic autonomy. The risk for Washington, the unraveling of its post-war alliance system. Treating allies as economic vassals is corroding the foundation of US power. A Japanese pivot would legitimize the BRICS alternative and accelerate the shift to a multipolar world. The US would find itself more isolated than ever. The global order is on the brink of transformation. We stand at a precipice. A Japanese realignment, once unthinkable, could define the century. If Tokyo moves closer to BRICS, the consequences for the US would be catastrophic, economically and strategically. The loss of Japan would end the US-led unipolar era, ushering in a fractured competitive world. Economically, Japan's participation in de-dollarization would weaken the dollar and shut US companies out of vast markets. Strategically, America's Indo-Pacific posture would be crippled, with military bases and influence at risk. The bonds of the US-Japan alliance are deep, but current policies are testing them to the limit. By waging economic war on friends, Washington risks driving them to its rivals. Japan's choice will shape not just its own future, but the fate of US global leadership. The world waits to see which path Tokyo will choose.